Seminole Sidelines, happy Thursday. I hope you're having a great week. Florida State baseball and softball having some great weeks as they begin the first steps of their 2025 seasons. Welcome to the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. Senior writer Kurt Weiler, editor Bob Ferranti. We'll be talking to you here for about a half hour. I know you might be watching that softball home opener with FAMU and the Joanne Graff Classic. So if you're catching that live stream, we'll kind of get you in and out before that starts up. We're going to focus to start here on baseball. Obviously, a very good start, 4-0. You know, we thought with JMU coming in, that was a tournament team last year. Even though it's a northern team, it's going to be the type of program you expect to give you a nice challenge. Florida State handles that challenge very well across the board. You saw great pitching, you saw very good defense, good base running, hitting up and down the lineup. I think it's as good of a first three games as can be expected. And then, of course, what happens Tuesday going down to South Florida. We'll go kind of big picture here to start with Kurt, and then we'll kind of drill down into some certain areas that we want to hit on specifically. But, Kurt, just your big picture thoughts on the Seminoles.
Through four games, I mean, I think they pretty much are what I thought they would be, kind of what I was told and what I observed being out at practice, and what I thought of the team coming to the season has proven true. I mean, they can really pitch. That pitching staff is deep. I mean, being able to have a guy like Evan Crest in the midweek is quite a luxury. And I think the offense is going to go through some phases. I think there is a little more – there's going to be a little less power, but there will still be power there. But I think the trade-off is there might be – early on there has been a little more swing and miss. And obviously that's something that I think is going to drive Jared a little nuts. It's something he's going to really work on. But I think, I think it pretty much through four games is exactly what I thought I was going to see. Maybe, I mean, better pitching, honestly.
I think we knew you always worried you overhype something, right? When you have, and you had a really good view of the scrimmages. I think you saw 5 or 6 leading up to the opening weekend. I think, you know, through your analysis, you were talking about how good the pitching looked, and that's against familiar faces in the batter's box. They maybe know you a little bit better to some degree. But this pitching staff, we knew Jamie Arnold was going to be, I've called him the All-American table setter for this team. He's going to be the guy who's going to set the tone for the weekend. Jamie Arnold does that very, very well. I think he didn't allow that hit until maybe about the 5th inning on Friday, but it looked really good from the start. The question marks we had was, what does Saturday look like? What do you get? What do you get on Sunday? Your thoughts on Jamie, but also Vellini and Mendez.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie, you always and like you don't want to say with one start there's no chance of it happening, but you always wonder like how can he build upon such a breakout season? I mean, there's only so much better he can get, in all honesty, but it seems like he has. I mean, I know adding that changeup and using that changeup more, he didn't use it a ton versus JMU, but I think especially once you get in conference play, I think that's going to be more used. But yeah, it was exactly what he was last year, pounding the zone. That fastball is so hard to square up. He kept the pitch count down because it kind of felt like JMU's approach with him was to try and ambush early in counts, thinking that the most hittable pitches they might get against him are early in the count when he's trying to get ahead in the count. And I think that's sound strategy, but all it really led to was some fairly soft contact. No, I don't think he was really squared up. I'm not sure he was squared up once in his entire outing, but yeah, I think the question marks about Joey Vellini. I think Joey Vellini is a guy I wasn't sure he was brought in to be a starter. I think that was maybe not how they drew things up in their minds when they took him. I think they thought maybe a leverage bullpen arm, but I know the staff has said he might have been the most consistent arm they've had throughout the course of the offseason. I know they limited Jamie's innings because he had such a workload pretty heavily over the offseason. But I think Vellini, I mean, having the 4 pitches he does and throwing them all for strikes. I think Link kind of even said, like, you know, it wasn't his best outing. It wasn't his best stuff. He's maybe been better in the preseason than he was against JMU, and he still threw, I think, allowed 1 unearned run over 5 innings of work with 7 strikeouts. And then Wes Mendez, I mean, the thing with Wes Mendez that you always heard from coaches was if he's commanding that fastball, his secondary stuff is unbelievable, and he's going to strike a lot of people out and just be great in general, but it's all about the command because the walks were a problem last year when he was a freshman at Ole Miss. And I think it was, I mean, frankly, right there with Jamie of some of the more impressive stuff over the weekend. I mean, I think I don't know if you can hope for that every time, but it's quite an encouraging start. And like the stat says, I mean, no earned runs allowed by the weekend starters. And frankly, the one earned run that Evan Krest allowed on Tuesday was fairly unlucky. I mean, it looked like a ball hit a divot to turn like a single into a triple. And then there was because the turf, the infield at USF is turf, like a chopper that should have been the third out. And instead was some chopper way up in the air and an infield single that brought home the run. So, yeah, I think it's all around quite impressive from a pitching staff that I know. I mean, Link Jarrett's messaging coming in is going to be run prevention is going to be the name of the game for this team, and that has been dead on. I mean, they've allowed 3 earned runs in 4 games. They're third nationally in ERA going into the second weekend of the season.
And just those 4 starts, I think it's 27 strikeouts and 3 walks. So again, it's that nice ratio. You're not getting into trouble. You're not putting on a base runner to create a stressful situation for yourself. You're taking care of business. But the bullpen has delivered. For example, John Abraham looked really, really good in his outing. To be seen what a lot of these guys look like, but Brady Lauk was out there, had a nice 2.1 shutout innings. I think maybe a good spot for us to give a brief update on Hudson Rowan. Just that injury might keep him out here short term, Kurt.
Yeah, it sounds more short term than long term. I think Link Jarrett said kind of it might be a couple weeks. So I think he called it a mid-body injury, which I think we observed it. Like it looks like it might have been an oblique. It's not an arm, which is good, but unfortunately, I mean, he was a guy who was stretched out to be like starter length if needed. He was throwing up to 5 innings, I think, during the preseason. You hope that a couple weeks off doesn't hurt that too much, and he's able to kind of ramp things back up. But I think it's Link talked about it's smart to not push through these things, especially early in the year where things can then piggyback of just let him heal up. But it's unfortunate because he's a guy who I know turned some heads in the preseason on the coaching staff.
Yeah, and in the field, backed up the pitching, just 2 errors here through 4 games. So the defense looks good. It's fundamentally, if you like fundamental baseball, this is a team that we thought would be really good up the middle. Catcher, second, short, center. We didn't see Jackson West play his normal catching role because of, again, a minor injury. I think that's fair just to characterize it in that regard. But the way Florida State looks with backup catchers, with the starters at second and short, combination of guys in center field. Harrelson looks really good as far as his range, but he's also played some corner too. This feels like a nice defense as far as how it complements the pitching, right?
No, I think the run prevention part of it that Link's talked about is both the pitching part, but then it's also he talked about in the preseason having 3 center fielders out there. And I think Gage Harrelson, a guy who played a lot of center field at Texas Tech, is more playing right now. And then a guy like Chase Williams, who's playing a lot of left field, who I think is, Link said, maybe the most explosive athlete he's ever coached. I mean, he's lethal on the bases, but that also, I imagine, will translate quite a bit to the field. I think so much of it is getting 2 balls. I mean, we saw the one play on, I think it was Sunday. I think it was the series finale on Sunday where Gage, the ball in foul territory way down the right field line, like Gage just ran it down and snagged it, jumped and caught it out of midair. And like James Tibbs became quite a right fielder, but I did remark to someone in the press box after that play, James Tibbs ain't making that play last year. Like you're stealing outs. Like that is last year's team, just a foul ball and the batter's still alive and who knows what happens. So when you can steal outs, I mean, I think that's where I'm high on this team's, like what their fielding percentage will be because of all the pieces. But I think what even doesn't show up in fielding percentage is I think this team is going to steal outs if that outfield is able to stay healthy, because I think they have 3 incredibly athletic guys capable of making really nice plays out there.
Yeah, and for the team, it's a .986 fielding percentage through 4 games. So again, it looks good early. I think defense will be consistent, will travel. It'll look good once you get on the road down into the depth of the season once the ACC games start, and really defense can improve over the course of a year or two. I mean, we'll see some of these silly mistakes that do happen from time to time. They won't happen nearly as much. Let's be honest. I thought production was really good up and down the lineup. I thought Harrelson as the leadoff guy, for example, is that spark plug, that kind of table setter type. that looks really good. Kurt, I think that's one area where this team looks very different compared to last year too, is you don't have Tibbs, you don't have Ferrer and Cantu and Dingus. It looks different from top to middle and then really all the way through. But maybe just your thoughts on how the lineup is constructed in Link's view, but then how it just seems to be productive.
Yeah, I think you're right. The comparison to last year, especially as you go down the lineup. I mean, last year we would have Alex Lodice in the 7, 8, or 9 hole. Like, I feel like he lived in that range, was a luxury, and spoke to the really impressive depth of that lineup. I still like the top of the lineup, and I think over the long haul, I'll like the bottom of the lineup more. But I think you've got some freshmen down there who are playing a good bit and who are going to go through the tough adaptation that is. I mean, Link said today when I asked him about it, kind of like he thinks more than any other jump in baseball, the jump from high school to college is like that, like huge, biggest leap in kind of how much tougher things get, even more than like the levels of minors to other or AAA to majors or what have you. But yeah, I think you saw the top of the lineup. I think, frankly, I mean, Jackson West was hitless in the first weekend, even though he started all 3 games at DH. I think he was a little unlucky. I think he squared up some balls and wasn't rewarded. Finally got that first hit on Tuesday on like a little bloop single, because isn't that just how baseball works? But I think I came away really impressed. I mean, Alex Lodice, frankly, I think is going to be asked to take on a big role. I frankly had a pretty rough opening day. Definitely, I think a lot of guys, they only had 4 hits. It felt like there was that opening day pressing a bit, wanting to be the guy on opening day. And I think he was 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts that day, had the golden sombrero. And he's had multi-hit games in each of the 3 since. I mean, Max Williams, the 2 homers already, you're going to see that pop. I've seen Cal Fisher, I think, has been squaring the ball up better than maybe his 286 batting average would have you believe. And I think we've seen glimpses from the freshmen. So I'm interested to see how it develops, because it's been somewhat balanced, but I wonder if, especially in the early going, this may be a more top heavy lineup.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a good amount of depth. I think there's some guys who honestly maybe could start in a lot of other programs. And, Noah Sheffield is a guy who I think got a lot of attention on social media because a fan in the stands took the video of that bat waggle. It looks nice. It looks like Gary back in the day, which is kind of a nice memory for all of us who watched him throughout his MLB career, especially those years in the Braves, right? Where a lot of us are Braves fans. But yeah, you saw what Noah could do just in that one at bat on Sunday. I think Harrelson is again an ideal type of table setter for this lineup. But Kurt, some other names. I like the first time I saw Miles Bailey over in Pensacola last fall. He's a left-handed hitter. He's a big left-handed hitter, but he hits lefties really, really well. If he runs into a ball, he's going to make some serious contact. I think we saw a little, maybe too much free swinging from him in the at-bats that I saw on Friday and Sunday. A little bit of a freshman there. Maybe just your thoughts on some of the freshmen, some of the newcomers overall, and what they've brought so far.
Yeah, I think you're seeing Miles go through that acclimation now. I mean, I think what he's going through now, and you've seen it quite a few times already this season, and I would imagine we'll continue to see it, is because of just the lefty slugger that he is what teams in high school can't do, but college teams can, is bring a lefty specialist out of the bullpen, maybe just to face Miles Bailey, and kind of like that. Like it's not something you really deal with in high school, and he's having to get used to it. And yeah, we knew there was a lot of swing and miss, and I think we've seen that. I think, James Tibbs struck out a good bit as a freshman. I think that is not abnormal, and is something you would expect will cut down as the seasons go on, given he is a sophomore draft eligible, so he might only be here for 2 years. But you saw, he had a 3-hit game in the series finale on Sunday, and I think you saw the power even on one where he didn't really square it up. I think the exit velo was like 88, which is not that high, and he still went opposite field down the left field line almost to the warning track. Like, it's just like the power is freakish. We haven't seen him really get a hold of one. Like, we've seen Max Williams get a hold of a few and some other guys, but it feels like just a matter of time before Miles gets that first homer. And I think he is another guy who there aren't going to be many cheap homers. I think Hunter Carnes, I've been really impressed. I think in his 2 games, he only has 1 hit, but he's walked 3 times. I think I've been impressed with the discipline there right away. He is perfectly content to flip the lineup order, and he's also impressed me defensively. I know Jackson West, it sounds like, might be catching at least a little this weekend, but I would imagine Carnes might keep catching on Jackson's off days back there, because he's it's quite impressive for sure. And so I think those two, Chase Williams, I mean, having him in the 9 hole, I think that speed, like I talked about, I mean, he's a guy who, like, we'll see how often he truly squares up the ball. He had a triple on Tuesday, but he's a guy who can beat out a chopper in the infield and then very easily steal second and steal third and kind of turn an infield single into what's basically a triple. And I know he's a guy who is not going to get thrown out very often at all, just from a standpoint of how fast he is. I mean, he has to be, I would say, the fastest Florida State player that has been in the program since I've been covering them about a decade.
Yeah, we were kicking that around on Sunday. It feels like, Ben DeLuzio was a guy with some serious speed, not high stolen base totals, but you felt that speed and how he ran the bases, how he patrolled the outfield. So yeah, great to have that kind of speed on this team. Not necessarily a newcomer, Kurt, but let me ask you about Cal Fisher, because he's a guy who's patrolling a new position in the sense that Cam Smith was at third. So emphasis is going to be on a guy like Cal. How does he field third base? Again, I only saw a couple of the games this weekend, but maybe your early thoughts on what Cal has shown at the plate, but also in the field.
Yeah, I think Cal, frankly, I think has he still doesn't have an extra base hit. He's got 4 hits. I think he's squared up some balls. I've liked what I've seen at the plate. I mean, last year there was some swing and miss in his bat, but he also had a pretty impressive homer to at bat kind of ratio, if you will. He for how few at bats he'd had quite a bit of pop, and I saw that in the preseason. I mean, he homered off Jamie Arnold one day, and it was a mammoth shot, like over the scoreboard in left center. I mean, he got all of that one. And honestly, I think he's taken to third pretty well. I think he hasn't been tasked with making a ton of tough plays, but I think he's made the routine ones well and has handled that well and kind of rounds out. I mean, I think Miles obviously at first is playing a pretty new position to him. I think he was a third baseman in high school, but they wanted to move him over there. I know Link very highly values height at first base to kind of get those high throws. And we saw one over the weekend where Miles went up and grabbed one and came off the base, but tagged the runner before he reached, kind of saved an error. And I think you've seen the same from Cal, where I think he's taken to it pretty well. I think he might be more natural there than at shortstop, where he kind of filled in some last year, or second.
So Florida State 4-0 start after the midweek game down in Tampa at South Florida. Penn coming in 3-game set starting Friday. So, of course, we'll have full coverage of that series, floridastate.rivals.com. Kurt's got a baseball notebook with some thoughts off our interviews with Link Jarrett today, giving you some thoughts on the schedule, injuries, and more there. Hey, we'll take a quick break. I want to give you some softball thoughts before we head out the door here and let you know what's coming up on Friday's show. Stick around, short break here, and we'll talk to you on the other side here.
Hey, Seminole fans! Alumni Hall is your ultimate FSU shopping experience and has moved to a new location off Timberlane Road in Tallahassee. Shop FSU gear from Nike, Champion, New Era, Yeti, and more. Alumni Hall has Seminole gear for the entire family, plus accessories and gifts. Spend $150 and you'll earn $10 off your next purchase with their Hall Pass rewards. Stop by their new location on Timberlane Road near REI, or shop anytime online at alumnihall.com. Alumni Hall, where Seminole fans shop. Finding an experienced lawyer you can trust is crucial. With over 50 years of combined litigation experience, the attorneys at Mowry Law Firm are dedicated to providing our clients with exceptional legal services, focusing on car and trucking accidents, premises liability, and wrongful death. Call 904-824-7799, MowryLaw.com.
Back on Seminole Sidelines again. Thanks for watching. Great Thursday afternoon here in Tallahassee. I know it's cold across a lot of the country, a lot of chilly weather and snow up in the Carolinas, but good weather for baseball and softball as Florida State baseball hosting Penn. Florida State softball be hosting its home opener after a trip to Puerto Vallarta and Clearwater. It's a pretty good little start to the season for the softball team, and they have stacked up a lot of run rule wins down in Clearwater. A really impressive stretch there, and nice to see. Again, shout out to ESPN when they do this. They have put softball in a high profile position this early in the year by really taking on this tournament down in Clearwater. 40 games in 4 days. The Seminoles were in that Sunday night primetime slot when they played UCF, and it was a pretty thorough domination that night, as it was in a lot of those games throughout the tournament. I think we saw the Seminoles really show the experience and the depth in the circle. You didn't see that last year at this time in Clearwater. That's the big difference. I think the big takeaway, if you're curious, why is this team potentially different? It's that depth and experience in the circle. They've got All-Americans in the lineup. They've got Michaela Edenfield. They've got Jasani Beecham, Issa Torres, the newcomer, Annabelle Widra, really impressive what she has shown in the circle. I think this is a team that we're going to enjoy watching and developing as the season goes on. It's a massive doubleheader on Saturday. You'll want to either get to the Plex or jump up in the parking garage, tailgate in the truck and watch those games. If you don't have tickets, ACC Network Extra will also have the broadcast starting. I believe that's 3:30 with that doubleheader on Saturday. Kurt, I know we were kind of on baseball duty throughout the weekend, but we caught some of these softball games on TV when we had time, especially that Sunday game. Just kind of your early thoughts watching the softball team, what they've shown you.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've the pitching. It feels like Lonnie, I think, learned some valuable lessons from last offseason. I mean, kind of went out and addressed that pitching problem with just a bunch of arms and just has options who've performed well, and the lineup's been the lineup. I mean, that the Wichita State game is just kind of the ultimate Florida State. Were they down? What was it, 5-1? They were down, and then they win 15-5 on a run rule. Just like, I mean, you think they're down, and then they do crazy things. I mean, the name you didn't mention offensively is that probably warrants mentioning just from the ridiculous start she's off to is Kennedy Harp. She's hitting .704 after 2 weekends. She's got 19 hits in 9 games and 10 extra base hits and a team-high 4 homers in 9 games. I mean, she is doing it all, and that's it's – when you add that on top of, I mean, the hype around Jasoni Beecham, Andy Issa Torres, and Michaela Edenfield back for her final season, I think you are not lacking in offensive options.
19 home runs in 9 games. They're somewhat long ball dependent, but I think as the bats figure things out, you're back in your home park. I think we'll see some more of those line drives, those maybe longer extra base hits. They got
12 doubles too.
Yeah. It's a really fun team to watch, and I wish I had seen just about every inning, but our schedule's overlapping with baseball and basketball and everything just didn't allow it. Katie Dack, 3 home runs. She had 3 home runs last year in a full season. So asked Katie the other day, how well are you seeing the ball? And she kind of laughed. Yeah, I mean, the ball looks pretty good to her right now. And had a nice interview, if you want to check it out on YouTube. Michaela Edenfield, that's what leadership looks like. If you want to go listen to 7 minutes of Michaela discuss how to handle a pitching staff, how to work with a freshman pitcher and Jazzy Franchik, who is not a freshman in her poise and her maturity, how she shakes off Lonnie Alameda, how she is willing to be assertive, type A in Michaela's view. So really nice interviews there on the Osceola's YouTube channel. If you're curious about hearing from Lonnie Alameda, Katie Dack, Michaela Edenfield. So yeah, they'll have a bunch of games this weekend. It's good to see them back home. It'll be good to see the Plex kind of rocking again with the crosstown rival and fam. Southeastern Louisiana, I believe, is the Friday opponent, and then Texas A&M for that doubleheader on Saturday. So you can maybe sneak in some nice baseball and walk over to softball if you kind of map out your schedule just right. Should be a really nice day to watch some games outside here in Tallahassee. Well, again, we've hit a really nice discussion here on baseball and softball. Coming up tomorrow, I want to let you all know, if you're curious about Florida State recruiting, some recruiting questions that you might have about various prospects. Are they in the mix for Florida State? Are they not? Who's coming on official visits? Patrick Burnell will have Rivals analyst Sam Spiegelman here Friday, 3 p.m., Osceola, YouTube, Facebook. You can check our Twitter if that's where you prefer to watch. We'll also have the podcast versions later for you, Apple, Spotify, all those good podcast channels. So good baseball discussion here, softball discussion with Kurt Weiler. I'm Bob Ferranti. Hope you guys have a great Thursday. Enjoy the weekend. Lots to look forward to. Great spring weather here in Tallahassee. If you're elsewhere around the country, I'm sorry that maybe the weather isn't so great, but live vicariously, I think, through Florida State baseball and softball as you watch these games on ACC Network Extra. Enjoy the weekend, and we will talk to you on Friday.